We're Cody and Christina, and we are only 1 week away from our Sprinter van, the Desert Cruiser, being done. Making it this far is such a huge accomplishment for us, and with just a little bit more to go, we can't be more excited. Last week, we nearly finished up the electrical wiring in the van, which set us up perfectly for this week's project, our heater. So grab a drink, sit down, and enjoy the step-by-step video of how to install an Espar D2 heater.
Now I know how complicated all of those parts are looking right now. I'm not the type of person that can read instruction manuals, nothing like that. When I see a parts list and I see how things are going together, it doesn't make sense to me at all. So I had to watch a ton of videos, but the one thing that I'm going to do in this video, I should have a fly on my chin. The one thing I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to just go step by step and only show the parts for that step. So the first thing up is the heater install itself through the floor. And we're going to need just the heater out of that massive pile of parts. But before we get into actually installing the heater, we have to remove the passenger seat because that's where I'm going to be placing the actual heater unit. But before we do that, the newer Sprinters have an airbag plug inside of the passenger seats. So I'm actually going to shut off power to the van. I'm going to disconnect the ground and the driver pedestal before I unplug anything so I don't throw any error codes. You can see this stud right here. As soon as I disconnect that kills power to the van. Obviously check it with a voltmeter before you do anything. So to disconnect it, you just pull down on the red tab, pull it off, make sure it's not touching anything, and it's done. Minutes of work, seat base is off. Oh yeah. This is what the inside of the seat base looks like. I forgot that we always stored bags. What do we got? Jumper cables in here. Oh my gosh, it's filthy. Before we get ahead of ourselves, I need to clean in here, and then we're going to figure out what parts we need to mount up the heater. Alrighty, so here is the D2 Espar heater. The backside here is the air intake with the fan, so that's going to be mounting towards the front of the van to suck air through the heater. And here's the heated coils that's going to be blowing through the van, and then when we flip this thing upside down, you can see the rubber gasket here. That's going to come in handy. We have our air intake hose, our exhaust hose. The 4 bolts on the outside are just mounting screws, and then that little guy right there is the fuel line. So what we need to do right now is figure out how we want to mount this inside of the seat base here. And then before we drill any holes, we need to go underneath the van to make sure everything is clear. Alrighty, so this is what underneath looks like. If you look right here, there's actually a little bolt, and that's inside the seat base, so that's kind of a reference point. And I want to pop the holes out right in here. I want to avoid the footwell here because I need to be running the exhaust hose and the air intake, and then obviously there's a support for the van here. So let's head up top. So to line the heater up, I'm actually going to somewhat pull the rubber mounting gasket up. And what I'm going to do is once I line up the heater, I'm just going to press down on the gasket here. I'm going to hold that on the floor, and then that's what I'm going to use to trace my holes out with. The back has plenty of room to suck air through. And then the hose feeding hot air through the van is going to come out the front. Just kind of pressing the gasket down. Alright, so you can see the gasket on the floor. I am very confident that that is going to fit just fine. I'm going to go underneath the van and check one more time, and then I'm going to be drilling our pilot holes. So I'm using a 1/4-inch drill bit. It's slightly larger than the mounting screws in the heater, so it'll give me a little bit of wiggle room. I'm going to be sealing all that up anyway. And then the 2 big holes for the air intake and then the exhaust, I'm going to be using an 1 1/8" hole saw. So we can see the 4 holes look super good right there. Before I put the heater in, I'm going to clean all this metal stuff up. Alrighty, test fit number 1. Oh yeah, there she is. Fits perfectly. You can see the air intake, the exhaust, all the mounting brackets, the fuel pump line, and it fits in there super snugly. Super happy with that. So you want to make sure to get every last drop of any metal shavings out of here because they definitely can rust. And once you do that, you're going to want to grab some sort of paint or rust protector. We're using Rustoleum. We've used this on the roof for our solar panel entry gland, all that stuff, and it's worked really well. So I'm just going to do some light spraying around the holes here. And I also painted underneath the van just to be super, super, super careful. Alright, now that the Rustoleum's all dry, I'm going to be putting a layer of this Permatex gasket maker stuff. It's actually used for making sealed connections over exhaust and other things that can withstand up to 700 degrees. And I'm just going to be coating this around the holes where the intake, outtake, and then the bolts go through, just to make a little bit of a thicker spot underneath the heater, because the holes are slightly oversized, and I know that this stuff is going to hold up to the heat that's down there no problem. So I'm going to put that inside right here, and I'm also going to put it on the bottom. Alright, so it's time to drop the heater in. Before you do so, make sure you throw the rubber gasket back on. Coils in the front. Here we go. Great. Drop it right in. Now let's go underneath the van, tighten everything up. Alrighty, so the bolts are in. As you can see, I made a nice little mess with all that sealant, but everything around the intake, outtake is all cleaned up. I'm going to wipe off a little bit more of the remnants of that stuff, and in about an hour when that stuff's dry, I'm going to tighten it all up. Heater will be in, and then we'll start running all the hoses. Alrighty, so I tightened down the heater, everything's nice and snug under the van, and now we're doing part 2, and these are the parts needed for that. So we're installing the exhaust. So as you can see, the muffler is here. We have the short-ended hose, which is going to go on the farthest portion of the muffler with the little screen on it. We have the main portion of the hose, which is going to hook up to the bottom of the heater. And there's 3 clamp rings, and all of them have a star patterned head. So make sure you have a screwdriver that will accommodate that. I've actually already put one of the hose clamps on just to kind of figure out how I'm going to be clamping it on, so you can see that there with the bolt. And then you're also going to need the bracket to mount the muffler to the bottom of the van. So I kind of imagine I'm going to be putting it like this and screwing the bolt that's provided in one of the kits straight into the bottom of the van. So let's do that. I got my muffler here. I have the bracket screwed up through the bottom with the provided nut and bolt, and then I have the top of the L facing towards me. I'm going to mount it right here. As you can see, I already have the hose attached to the bottom of the heater, which I'll show you guys. I am going to be trimming this, and then I'm just going to have it vented right out underneath here, so it's not by the slider door. And the point of this is any sort of nasty contaminants from the exhausting of the fumes will not get into the bottom of the van, and then you just need to make sure that the end of this is poking out the bottom. So I think that I'm going to screw this thing in right here. I cut it outside with the hacksaw, and I filed the edges down just to make sure there were no sharp ends. So now I'm going to reinstall it back up to the heater exhaust, put the clamp ring on, and then we will figure out how to mount it to the muffler. But screwing it back up here to the heater is really awkward, putting the clamp ring on. I have figured out how I'm going to be running the muffler exhaust, so now I need to put the clamp ring onto the muffler here, but I lost the clamp ring. It's hard working under these vans. Oh, clamp ring's right in front of the camera. Okay. You want to make sure that when you run your exhaust hose to give room for the air intake hose, and you definitely don't want those two lining up in similar paths, because the whole point of the air intake hose is to suck in clean air. Alrighty, so the muffler for the exhaust is all mounted. You can see my bracket right here facing towards the driver's side. You can see the clamp ring here, clamp ring at the other end, the exhaust going out the side, which I'll show you. And then there it is, hooked up to the heater. So that's how it comes out. You can see the other clamp ring. Now I'm going to spin around. Here's another angle. So here's the muffler going towards the back of the van. Comes out, curves right by this pillar, and straight out the side. You want to make sure that this little guy is poking out underneath and away from the van. This pillar right here, if it's behind it, all of that nastiness from the exhaust could stay underneath the van. If you have any seams or anything like that, could build up inside your van, which would be really, really bad. That's the whole point of this exhaust. Now air intake time. You are filming. Just when I thought I was done, I added something that I think is going to be really beneficial. I added a little rubber clamp ring. There's a little pillar right in here. You can see the screw coming through there. I was worried that this was just going to rattle around a lot, so I actually just added that little rubber gasket. I bought that separately. And I think that this is going to stay super secure now right by the edge. I'm super happy with that. You want to get your air intake hose, and it comes with a different kind of clamp ring. This one has a flathead screwdriver attachment, and this will go right around the heater. And I've kind of figured out the layout that I want to do, so let's do it. Did it just break the bolt? Holy crap! So I found what I thought was my attachment point. I don't know if you guys can see that right there. That is a bolt. It literally snapped the bolt in half trying to screw into the frame. So I guess I need to find another point. I will cover that up with some Rustoleum just so it doesn't rust, but holy cow, that just shows you how strong these frames are. Oh my gosh, we freaking did it. Finally, this thing is hard to screw into. Don't mind my awkward upside down talk. You just need this to cap the end of the air intake. It's a little critter protector, even though, I mean, I don't really know what this thing's gonna stop. All right, let me show you what we got. So you can see the exhaust hose right there, and then you can see the air intake. And it goes out, kind of does a curve, and then it comes straight out towards us. And you can see that I used another one of those cool little rubber clamps that I bought and just screwed it straight into the frame. And you can see that the air intake hose is at a slightly downward slope, and kind of makes sense to me, but the longer this hose is, so as you can see ours is pretty long, the less chance there is of crud getting in there. So I actually used the full length of hose, and now we are done with that. I apologize because this next part, for some reason, I did not film the parts needed before I actually did it. I thought I did, maybe I didn't press record. So I just wanted to show you guys what you need. You're gonna need a couple clamp rings that come with the kit. I believe I used 6. You're gonna need fuel hose. I did not use the blue fuel hose that came with the kit. I bought my own. You can see this is just a black literal fuel hose that I got from my local AUTOZONE. I will link it in the description below. And then you're also going to need the part that connects into the auxiliary fuel tap of the van, and that is this little black guy right here. Again, I'll put this in the description below. This just allows you to plug into the tap of the van, and then you run your hose through another piece that I'm going to be talking about. It's a little white adapter that allows you to go from the large hose size that comes off of the fuel tap to the fuel pump, which I will also link in the description below. So right now we're just going to be running the fuel line, connecting it to the bottom of the heater. Okay, so the first step for me was to connect up the fuel line to the bottom of the little fuel pump from the heater. And oh my gosh, it is so tight doing all these clamp rings because we have the exhaust here, we have the air intake, and then the fuel line. So now I kind of need to figure out where I'm running it. I have an idea that I'm going to bring it this way, up and over the heat plate here, over the drive shaft. So let's figure that out. Alright guys, we are making moves. Sorry if it's a little grainy. My ISO is at 2500 because it's dark under here, but the line has been ran. So you can see it coming from up here. I threw one of those little 1/4-inch rubber clamps in, and I zip tied it to this little wire so I didn't want it touching the, let me focus. You can see it's not touching that heat shield there above the exhaust, which I'm sure gets super hot. Comes underneath. Well, I'm going underneath. It goes over. And then you can see it come out the other side here. We got another clamp. straight over the drive shaft, which obviously you don't want any cords touching. And then this is the fuel tank here. So the cord actually goes over the fuel tank. And let me try and show you the other side. So it comes out right over here. It actually comes out in this little crevice above the fuel tank. And you can see right here, I have another hose clamp. And then I think what the plan is to mount the fuel pump somewhere on the inside of the footwell here. So, if you guys see this little connector right here, this is actually the little auxiliary port for plugging into the fuel line. So I think you just pop it off. Oh, oh, I pulled the cap so hard the camera popped off. Alrighty guys, so here's the fuel pump. It needs to be mounted at a minimum of a 15-degree angle. The shorter side is the intake side. Fuel flows this way. So I'm going to mount it on the inside of the footwell right here. You can see my connection coming from right here. Actually, I'm going to scoot it over a little bit. Probably right here. And I'm going to screw this thing in now. Okay. I like where that's at. Just gonna trim this up. Make sure to pop the cap off. I'm going to cut my hose. Let's see how this length is. That's great. And I'm gonna put another clamp in right here just to be safe. And then don't forget your clamp rings. Done, baby! Alright, now I'll give you guys a close-up. So, this is the adapter I bought. I'll put the link in the bio that hooks up to the fuel line, my first clamp ring. And then this is the thicker hose that came with the kit on another clamp ring. This is the white adapter that I bought. I got it at my local AUTOZONE, but you could pick it up on Amazon, whatever you want to do. And then this is actually my hose. What is it? It's 3/16. So it's actually slightly larger than the smallest hose that comes with the kit, but it still works with the clamp rings. And then from there, hey Chrissy. Then from there it runs straight into the fuel pump with another clamp ring to attach everything on. You can see that nice angle that I have. I have 1 1/4 inch self-tapping screw through the footwell. No, it does not pop out through the inside. And then this is my hose again, and this is the hose that you guys saw that ran all the way from the other side of the van with another hose clamp, and it's just making a simple little loop, and then it follows that path that I showed you guys earlier. Alrighty, so today's build day is done. I'm really stoked with the progress we made. Tomorrow is going to be finishing up the heater. We just have to do all the power. I only have to get under the van one more time. So we'll see you bright and early tomorrow. Peace. Good morning, guys. It is day 2 of the Espar D2 install. We're going to get all the wiring done today, and I only have to go into the van one more time, and that is to run wiring from the massive wireway through the bottom of the van to the fuel pump. To do that, I'm actually going to be using something that's already pre-cut in the van, but before we get there, I need to remove the driver's seat. 4 bolts. So much easier with a drill. Okay, so driver's seat is off. There were 2 little disconnects in there. The inside of this seat well looks extremely scary because there's lots of wires and different things going on. But what I need to do is gain access to that little black hole there. That's actually a rubber boot that goes to the bottom of the van. So I'm going to use that as my wireway to feed the fuel line electrical wires to. So let's do that. Okay, so I now have access to the wireway, and that is underneath the plastic here. You can see the inside of it. There's some wires running through, and I had to pull up the floor to get real access to it. To do so, just start from the back. As you can see, I just rolled ours back because I don't need access to this side. Work your way around the e-brake so it doesn't tear, and then to take out the floor over here, right along the edge of your driver footwell, there's 3 little star pattern bolts. You pull those out, and then you pull the mat out, and there's your access. Now we need to run wire through here out the bottom of the van. Alright, now that we have everything exposed, I know what you're thinking. Oh my gosh, time to do some wiring. This loom is massive. There's 4 splits on it. We're only focusing on the one that we need right now, and I've already spooled it out to show you guys exactly which one it is, and it's this little guy right here. So it's the gray and brown wire with the little green weather stripping, and it's already pre-crimped. And this is these are the 2 wires that plug into the fuel pump. You will also need, let me grab it, this little connector right here. So those wires plug into this thing, which seals it all up, and then this end plugs straight into the fuel pump. And you're also going to want a zip tie, and I'll show you why. So let's route this through the floor into the driver's seat. You're not going to need that much of this line because the fuel pump's literally right down below. So let's head into the van. Make sure you have some clippers because we will need to cut a zip tie, and that's what the extra zip tie is for. So this is the bottom of that little rubber boot that I was talking about. So I'm going to cut the zip tie on here really quick, and then this thing will open up and we're going to be able to pull our wires right through, straight to the fuel pump. Easy. So I apologize if I couldn't show that well. I don't have my tripod with me. But here's the rubber booty. Here's the little line. You can see the little bit of green weather protector on the back side of this little connector. And this is the top of the fuel pump. And it just plugs straight in. Once you hear it click, you know you're done. I'm just going to zip tie this hose in right here and then recover the booty. And we are 100% done under the van now. It feels mighty good to be done under the van. So now we just need to run wiring inside the van. Okay. It is time to do the electrical portion of the heater. So what you see here are things that you are going to need. We're going to need the 5 amp fuse, and we're going to need a 20 amp fuse, the fuse holder, and then we're going to need the skinny blue red wire, and then the fat wire that has the yellow end on it. So what's going on here is we're providing power to the heater right now. So prerequisite, you need to have your wire. So I have my 12 gauge duplex wire coming from my Blue Seas fuse block in the back. So right now I'm going to strip this back to expose the wire inside. Alright, so I got my positive wire, my negative ground coming from my Blue Sea fuse block back in the back of the van. And what these are going to do is supply power to the heater. So we need to connect the skinny and fat blue and red wire that came in the kit to my positive wire here. And how I'm going to do that is, well, first I'm going to cut this back because I don't need all of this length. Literally, I just cut this back. And now what we need to do is we need to join these wires that came with the kit to my positive. How we're going to do that is this guy right here. So if you see in the center, it's all metal, and that's where you make your crimps. Okie dokie, with our connections now made, you want to grab your little fuse box that came with the kit, grab whichever wire you want, doesn't matter where it goes, slide her in, and it clicks into place like that. You probably heard it. Then what we're going to do, bring your smaller blue one, plug it into the one next to it if you'd like, clicks in, okay? Now, my bigger wire is in the first slot. Take your 20 amp fuse and just slide her in. And then you grab your 5 amp fuse, same thing, slide it right in. Okay, next step. Now you grab the scary looking loom that has a bunch of different attachments. Disregard this guy right here. We're going to disregard this. This is the brown, this is the ground. We're not going to pay attention to that right now. You can see from the wire harness there's a skinny red and there's a fat red. We need to strip these back And then you need to grab these little crimp connectors that came with the kit, put them onto the ends, and then we're going to plug them into the corresponding location. So the fatter red wire from the harness plugs into the same 20 amp fuse as the large red wire coming from the fuse block, and then the same with the skinny one. So let's do that. Alrighty, so once you have your ends crimped on, flip your little fuse box upside down, take your larger fat red wire, and you're going to want to plug that into the same 20 amp fuse as the other large red wire. So just slide it in, and then you take your smaller one and you do the same. Alright, so with both wires connected up, this is what it will look like on the inside. I got my fat wires going to the 20 amp, skinny wires going to the 5 amp fuse here, and the only thing that we have left to do now is connect our ground coming from our fuse block in the back to the ground of the heater. Alright guys, the wiring demon has been tamed. The fuse box is done. Like I said, you don't need to worry about this end here. My ground is connected. I'm going to spool this stuff up, but the very last thing we get to do is plug in the wiring harness, and then we're done. Clicks in. Boom baby! Done with wiring this sucker up. Last step of the heater for us is installing the vent to provide heat to the cabin. So what I did, well, we already kind of knew where we wanted to actually have the hole, but just grab your vent that comes in the kit and kind of line up depending on where you want it, especially with how your hose fits. This is the hose that comes from the heater itself to the back side of the vent. Once you figure that out, you're going to need a 2 3/8 inch hole saw, and it's time to make a mess. I need glasses actually. Ooh. Next time I would do this before I put the heater and all the wires in. Alright, so now we need to file the hole in. That steel is hot. We need to file the hole up, and then we need to throw some Rustoleum on there so it doesn't rust, and make sure to clean up every little bit of these metal shards so that they don't rust. And then once you have your hole, you're going to want to throw the inside of the adapter into the hole itself, and I'm going to also drill my screw locations so that we can paint everything up at once. Alrighty, so our Rustoleum has dried up. If you've noticed the camera works a little better, it's because I'm not shooting it on my own anymore. Thanks, Chrissy. So once you have painted and let that paint dry around the holes, I just took the little back mount that comes with the kit, and I'm gonna quickly screw them in. There's 3 holes, and just lightly screw them in so that you don't break the plastic covering. Okay, and then you take your vent cover. I'm gonna have ours with the back facing that direction because we don't want the heat going out. We want it coming towards us, and it just snaps into place. I don't know why I'm using the world's longest screwdriver.
Good.
Yep. Alrighty guys, so there's the heater installed. Hose is all hooked up. Probably just gonna zip tie the wires a little bit closer to the corner to keep them tight. And then I did want to show y'all what the controller looks like, the Smart Pro controller. So here is the wire coming from the 4-way wire harness for the Easy Start Pro controller. You don't need to pay attention to all this mess of wires. Just need to pay attention to this little 4-pronged clip. And then here's the controller right here. Super nice. We're gonna have it mounted right about here. But to plug this in, all you need to do is, you can see there's 2 connectors coming off of the controller. The other one has 4 slots. All you're gonna do is just plug these together, and boom, the controller's done. It feels absolutely amazing to have this spar in. 2 full days. I haven't seen you at all.
I know.
It's kind of funny that we just installed the heater because it's been about 110 degrees out, and that's why it took 2 days. We're not turning the heater on quite yet though, because we still have to turn our power on. Stay tuned for next week's video where hopefully we don't blow the van up. Make sure to let us know if you like this video and if it helped you guys out. Subscribe to our channel. Next week should be the last build video before we take off.
All right.
Oh man, we're getting super stoked. Until then, peace.